the time to talk with us.
Oh, my pleasure, it really is. Thank you so much for sort of, just for your enthusiasm and passion for history.
How you got into studying history?
To a different world, and sort of, it was almost kind of like an intellectual holiday. You were going where it's okay, let's go and visit 17th century England. If you like stories and you're a bit nosy, and you like poking around in other people's business, then I think history does tend to appeal.
We wanted to ask you, what has been the highlight of your career as a historian?
With the National Archives, the UK's National Archives here. My favourite historical document of all time is actually a graph that was produced in the early 1900s. And it's fascinating because it showed that when the school meals were introduced, the weight of these students started to rise. And of course, in those days, that was a good thing. There was a chief minister, a guy called Thomas Cromwell, and he basically used to doodle in the margins of his notes, and he would just kind of write rude things about all the other people who were sitting around at the table, and I just thought, we've been there, haven't we?
Have you ever had to argue with another historian about putting something down to be published or having published something, because you know that there are a lot of historical perspectives on the same event?
Great British contribution to sort of modernisation or something of that sort. That's the argument that's often put forward. On the other hand, you would see other historians who would sort of say, well, actually, this is a story of kind of exploitation and violence and oppression. And in my experience, 9 times out of 10, all of those things are true. And it's very rare for one bit of history to disprove another bit of history. In fact, I often say that as a historian, the best you can ever hope for is to be not wrong. Nowadays, sort of revisionist historians or revisionist history tends to be, what, we all know about the black and the white, and you've completely missed out the red bit.
No, my question is, do you believe that there are any absolute truths in history?
Yes, but they're not usually very useful. We often conflate and confuse history with events, and the history doesn't start until after the events have finished. So history is not events. History is trying to make sense of those events.
Yeah, so what part of history do you find more complicated to explain or simplify?
It doesn't take a lot of work to discover the history that you thought was simple, isn't. And the history that you thought was uncontested, actually, it is contested. The impact of European expansion and empires in Central America and South America, then inevitably, that's going to be incredibly complicated, and it's going to be very different experiences in different localities. But I don't think anybody's going to argue with the basic premise that it didn't go well for the indigenous people. Prosopographical approach means that you don't really have enough information. This is most typically for the early periods, for the medieval periods or early modern. I think it's the art of being positive with the evidence or the source material that you have. That link, you wouldn't say, okay, I want to find out about resistance to slavery. I'd better check the insurance documents. It's not the first place you would think of looking, is it? And yet there it is. You can find a story in those what appear to be unpromising places.
What was your favorite case study to write on or research about?
Oh, wow. Been some great ones. I think probably it was the whole story of Magna Carta. But what I discovered was that Magna Carta actually was essentially thrown in a ditch. And I think it was one chronicler who, when John died, he said, "Foul as it is, hell will be made more foul by the presence of John." And I think it's a classic example of how you run a country.
Hi, first thing I want to say is that you literally saved me during the IGCSE. So what I wanted to ask
Well, that's made my day. Thank you.
No, I swear, like I got an A-star and I was like, I owe this all to Miss Santana and Ben Walsh.
Well, I think you probably did a little bit of work in there as well.
Okay, so what I wanted to ask is like, did you have a Ben Walsh when you were younger? Because like, what would I do?
Actually, no. They didn't occupy the same kind of... They didn't hit the nail on the head in the same way that these books for the national curriculum and then for the GCSE came in.
Do you ever have to teach a class with your own book?
Yeah, I did. The worst bit is when you kind of just... You look at something and think, did I really write that? Or worse still, actually, when a student sort of says, you know, you've said this here. You say, did I? Really? So yeah, I have actually taught with it, and you know, there was a first edition and then a second edition, and the second edition was partly because of teaching with it and thinking, you know what, we could do this better.
We've been wondering what to call ourselves as fans of Ben Walsh. So far, we've been calling ourselves the Wolves of Walsh Street. We wanted to know if you had any recommendations.
I couldn't possibly comment. I don't think. I would call yourself history heroes, because that's that's the legacy that you want to leave.
Well, that wraps up our interview. Thank you so much. That was a great way to end.
Thank you very much. It's been wonderful to talk to you. Thanks a lot.